Hello everyone, and welcome to Tuesday's video. Before we go too far in this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below, do all of those things. They really help a small channel like mine grow. We've already seen extreme growth, so do you think you can assist in that? Well, anyway. Today we are going to be covering off several terrifying trespass encounters. Now this could be where the person writing is the trespasser, or the person who has had people trespass on their property. So please, take your time, take in the stories, and relax. Yesterday was by far the most traumatic experience of my life, and after loosely following this sub for some time, I figured, why not post about it? I live in Texas, in a suburb around Dallas, and there's a quarry/lake outside of our town where many people I know have cliff jumped there. It had a reputation of being a cool place, and my friends and I were trying to have a fun summer experience, so we decided to go. Our dumbasses went on a Monday around 6:30, hoping to be discreet upon entering the location since we knew we would illegally be trespassing on someone's property. When we first arrived, the area was very quiet and seemed to not be dangerous of an area at all. We hopped a fence and immediately ran over by a nearby cliff that was around 40 feet high. We also noticed that there was a tractor of some sort moving on the other side of the quarry, maybe 300 meters from us. That's important. After about 10 minutes of anxiety overload, I eventually jumped in, and my friend did so afterwards. We were swimming around trying to find a way out of the water. Then, all of a sudden, I hear a firecracker pop. I look at my friend and we both make a what the hell's going on kind of face, and then I spot a black Hummer that was near where the tractor was. More pops kept coming. Then I realized that these are definitely not firecrackers, as I had seen the bullets land in the water nearby. I took cover behind a rock and started screaming to the person firing that we were leaving the property and we weren't going to come back. My fight and flight instincts were kicking in, and I was able to spot a white middle-aged blonde hick-ass woman and some sort of rifle, just sitting and aiming it at us. My friends and I decided that we had to get the fuck out as soon as possible, except to do so we had to climb a hill around 40 feet that was extremely steep and only made of rocks. I had a feeling inside that the woman was trying to just scare us off, but she kept on shooting as I tried to scale the hill. I was so nervous that I slipped, gashing my toe open pretty badly, but luckily I was able to make it up the cliff, besides the fence where we had come from. As soon as we scaled the fence, my nerves were somewhat decreasing, and I was catching my breath. We decided to go to my car as soon as possible that was parked across the street. Then I see a black Hummer. At the time, probably due to the nerves, I didn't realize it was the same one as before, but she pulls over and hops out with her bloody gun in her hands, so we ran off. We were able to hide and flee the scene luckily, but it was terrifying nevertheless. And yes, I know I put myself in harm's way by trespassing on private property, and to some extent it was my fault. But it was traumatizing, traumatic, terrifying nevertheless. So, this is my first post here. I didn't think it was scary enough for Let's Not Meet, so I'm posting it in Creepy Encounters instead. When I was around 14 or 15, my brother, a neighborhood kid, and I would always go hiking together in a local forest. One day we decided we wanted to hike up at night, and since we were young, my brother was 12 and his friend was 13, my parents came with us. Now, we'd lived in this neighborhood for 10 years, and we were used to the fact that sometimes people would illegally hunt in the woods. Since the park is in a residential area, there are very clearly posted no hunting signs everywhere, and a hunting ground fairly close. But I guess people just like the thrill of breaking the law. However, it was around 8, and usually the hunting didn't start until around midnight. For context, we live in a relatively safe suburb of a not-so-safe town. As long as we didn't leave the neighborhood or walk late at night without adults, we were perfectly fine. Or so we thought. Since it was around Memorial Day, the occasional fireworks had been going off for a couple of nights at around the time we left. We hiked up to the top of the hill without hearing anything, but once we got to the top and tried to make a bonfire, we heard what my brother and my friend and I thought were fireworks. However, my dad became uneasy and decided to put out the fire, saying that the explosions he heard sounded different from regular fireworks. We hiked back down the hill in almost complete silence, and the sharp explosions kept going off. Finally, we reached the end of the trail, and we were met with several police cars in the little parking lot in front of the entrance to the forest. Apparently, there had been at least one lurker, a man about 6 feet tall wearing jeans who had a gun and was illegally hunting very close to the nearby houses, some of them with children living there. We actually got stopped, despite being a local middle-aged couple and 3 young teenagers, because my dad fit the description of the trespasser. Despite being a pretty skinny and nerdy type of dude who's never even held a gun. Also, even though we'd been night hiking in this park for years, the cops told us that the park technically closed at 7, which made us suspicious. My parents were questioned and found to be innocent, obviously. And I was even asked a few questions since I looked older than 15. They let us go, and we walked to the car fairly shaken up, because some of those gunshots had sounded really close to where the bonfire area was. To 15-year-old goody two-shoes me, I felt like I'd almost gotten arrested. So, basically, a word to the wise. Don't illegally hunt or shoot a firearm in a residential area full of kids. Thanks. Before I go on, I would like to start by mentioning that I did post this in a different sub, and I was told that it was a better fit here. My bedroom has floor-to-ceiling windows, which face the backyard. I really feel the need to close the curtains because I don't want to shut out my great view. This also makes my dogs and cats happy too. And the only way anyone would ever be able to see in is if they were just trespassing, which I've made difficult to do. My yard is encircled by both a tall fence and a thicket of bushes and trees on both sides of that fence, the entirety of my property. A couple weeks ago, I pulled into my driveway and I was greeted by a woman waiting for me. She claimed she was there out of concern for the neighborhood children. According to her, she and her kids had seen me through my windows, dressed inappropriately, while they were hiking. I told her that that wasn't possible because the only way anyone could see into my window would be through my backyard, which is far from any hiking trail. She replied with a condescending, "Well, sweetie, I'm sorry, but I have proof." She pulled out her phone and showed me a picture taken of me in my underwear through my window. It was very blurry, but I knew it was me, mostly based on the fact my hot tub pool and garden were in the foreground of the picture. I pointed this out, and the fact that the only way those things could possibly be in the picture was if she had taken it from inside my backyard. I asked her directly if she and her kids had jumped my fence. Instead of giving me a direct answer, she began lecturing me about how inconsiderate it is to be an exhibitionist around children. I explained that I would never exhibit myself in a situation where I thought young children could see me, but I wasn't expecting anyone to trespass in my yard. She ignored the mention of trespassing and launched into a tirade about how she's unsure I must be very proud of my body since I've clearly paid enough for it. But that's no excuse to expose myself to children. She ended her smug little tirade by saying, "So, honey, you'll be closing your blinds from now on." I told her that no, I absolutely would not be, because only people in my property could see in my windows, and that she and her children were not welcome on my property. At this point, she dropped the sweetness and started bitching that the previous owner of my home had been family friends and hadn't locked their gates, and why even have a butterfly garden if kids can't visit, and that it takes them half an hour to walk to the park unless they go through my yard, and that she'd seen kids at my place before, and why were only she and her children being excluded? At this point, I was pissed, so I told her that I lock my gates to keep assholes like her out. She just kept harping on the fact that she'd seen other kids at my place, so I told her, "Those are my nephews, who I love, whereas I don't actually give a single crap about whether you and your kids live or die." She started scream crying at me like she was possessed. I don't know if you guys remember that insane god warrior lady from Trading Spouses, but that's the caliber of yelling that this woman in my driveway was doing. I went inside, but she stayed out there for a few minutes, going on about being disrespected and how she was going to call the cops because I was a pedophile whore who was making death threats towards her family. A few days afterwards, the psycho returned along with a police officer. She had reported that I was exposing myself to her kids and making threats on her life. I told the officer my side of the story and showed him my backyard so he could see that the crazy lady's photo evidence could have only been taken while trespassing on my property. He had printouts of her evidence, and I'm showing him on the pictures that they had to be taken inside my fence when I realized that the pictures were actually from several different occasions. I'm wearing different garments in some of them. They were taken on several occasions. I pointed this out, and I point out again that all of them had to be taken while trespassing. At this point, it seemed to click for the officer that this lady was just mental, though perhaps he had already a slight inkling. And he began questioning her about trespassing and taking pictures of me without my consent. He told us both that actually I could pursue charges if I wanted. At this point, she dialed up the crazy. She started babbling an insane stream of consciousness. I'm not going to type it all out here, but it included things like me being a prostitute or having men over all the time and why I needed a big property when I was alone without children. That I was just a big fake-breasted stripper bimbo, etc. It went on for a full 30 seconds of insane babbling, ranting, while me and the cop just stared at her. When she stopped, the cop essentially said, "Well, okay, I'll look into that, but right now, we're discussing the issue of trespassing, ma'am, and photographing Miss, my name, without her consent." She ignored that and blurted out she said she didn't care if my children died. The officer looked at me with a raised eyebrow, but told her that that's not a crime, and attempted again to redirect to the issue of trespassing and photographing. Once again she ignored that and asked the officer if he had any kids. He told her that he didn't, and she kinda threw her hands up like, "Oh well, that's the problem here." The officer assured her that the law doesn't change based on whether the responding officer has kids or not. The cop then asked me what I wanted to do, and I said that I wanted to drop the whole thing on the condition that she deleted the pictures of me on her phone and never stood foot on my property again. She didn't want to agree to either condition, but ultimately the officer persuaded her to hand over her phone, and he went through her pictures and deleted them. From all folders, his words. Apparently, she had them on multiple folders on her phone. All the while, this lady is acting like she's the one being violated. My second condition was more of a sticking point. This woman did not want to agree to never set foot on my property. She kept diverting the discussion by saying stuff like, "She has other kids there all the time, so I don't see the issue." "Well, what if my husband is with the kids? How is he supposed to know?" Or, "If they are with a babysitter, what are they supposed to do then?" And then tearfully, over and over again, she just said, "I don't understand what the problem is." Eventually, the officer gave up and just told her that she had officially been warned, whether she wanted to accept it or not. She started weeping as if someone had slapped her and had to be escorted out of my yard. I thought that would be the end of it, but it's come to my attention that she is going around door to door in the neighborhood claiming that I'm a pedophile prostitute and asking people to sign a petition to get me to move. Absolutely insane. So now I'm going to have to figure out how to issue a cease and desist so that this lady stops being my bloody headache. We have a very odd woman who moved into the area recently. Let's call her Annie. She's about 25 and recently became engaged to a long-time neighbor who is over 60. Let's call him Tim. My parents and younger brother have already met Annie before, and I've never met her. They all say she is crazy, and today I got to see it for myself. On one occasion, she approached my 16-year-old brother and his friends and gave them life advice while casually informing them how Tim beats her. My mum also saw her with bruises one time. She seemed overly chatty, but we felt bad for her and didn't know how to help her. Today, while my dad is bringing in some stuff from the car, Annie engages him in conversation. He had never met her before, but he had heard the stories about her, so he was nice enough to her. She immediately rolls up the sleeves of her hoodie and shows the scars in her arms and casually mentions how she's going to unalive herself because Tim is beating her. My dad is clearly shocked and offers that him and the rest of my family are there for her if she ever needs help. She continues to talk to him for another 45 minutes about everything, from a love of pearls to how she broke her toilet recently. After a while, my dad manages to get away and doesn't think much else about it. About 4 hours later, my dad hears the doorbell and answers the door. To his surprise, Annie just comes walking into the house. She is now changed clothes and is wearing hot pink yoga pants and a very revealing crop top. Bright red lipstick, lots of jewelry, and what could only be described as 8-inch neon green F-me heels. My dad admitted he didn't even catch what she had said because he was beyond shocked by the whole situation. When she strolls over and grabs my cat that is sitting on the kitchen counter. At this point, my dad runs upstairs and wakes me. I'm a late sleeper. And gives me the 2-minute version of the story, telling me he is uncomfortable being alone with her. So I come downstairs with him, and she's crying and still holding my cat while telling me that Tim is hiding marijuana under her bed. He's a cop, so it's unlikely he had any weed lying around. So I'm confused why this strange woman is in my house, dressed like a prostitute, holding my cat. So I walk over to her and I grab my cat, which is now clinging onto me for dear life, which is saying something since she never likes to be held. And he continues to sob while hitting on my dad. After a few minutes, he eventually excuses himself to his conference call on his computer and she eventually leaves. Later in the day, he figured out Annie had gone from house to every house on my street where an older man lived, all while wearing the outfit I saw her wearing trying to hit on them. So now we have a crazy woman who is terrorizing my street while dressed like a prostitute and trying to seduce older men in my neighborhood. Editor note. Same day I post this, my visitor comes back that very night. It's Friday night around 8:50 p.m. The little ones are in bed and I'm chilling with some friends online, gaming. There's a loud bang and I'm instantly freaked out due to having my home, my safe place, invaded by some creeper twice in the past 3 months. I turn the volume on my computer down, trying my best to come up with excuses. Things like it was just the neighbors doing something. Who in their right minds would try to break into my house when they can see that I'm awake? Front outdoor light on, lounge light on, etc. It's quiet for a while, so I return to playing the game and talking to my friends. That's when I hear rustling. I think it's coming from the game, despite the volume being super low, but to be safe, I turned the sound on the computer off completely. The rustling is still there. At this point, I thought it might be an annoying pest possum. The banging could have been it jumping onto the garage roof, and now it was snuffing around outside in the leaves, searching for some food. As I said earlier, who would try to trespass when they could clearly see someone was home? If they did trespass, why would they be doing so loudly? I want to say it put me at ease, but it didn't. Fast forward an hour and a half, and the noises have stopped. My cat's begging me to be let outside. I hate opening doors, curtains, windows at night. Paranoia at its finest. But tonight I had a reason to be paranoid, at least. I kept the chain lock on the door and let the fat fuzzball squeeze out, and then had a bit of a peek through the crack, seeing if anything was amiss in my front lawn. Nothing out of the ordinary, so I locked the door and headed back to the lounge. 5 minutes later, someone tries the door handle, finding it locked. I hear a laugh, and they start scratching on the glass as I frantically grab my phone to call the police. Whoever it was left by the time they answered the phone. The police couldn't find evidence that anyone had ever been in the property. They did a sweep of the neighborhood but couldn't find anyone on the streets either. Whoever you are, I'd say let's not meet, but I'm pretty sure that you're the same person who came the other 2 times, and I'm fairly certain that person is my ex. So, Mr. X, if it is you, smile for the camera next time you come around. They just arrived in the mailbox. Hello everyone. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. For those who made it through, and if you're new here, and you want to hear more videos from me, please remember to like and subscribe. Maybe even leave a comment letting me know where you're coming from. Now, I will say I apologize for asking people to constantly subscribe and like. I know it's very irritating hearing it at the end and the start of each video, but apparently it helps channels grow. So, the bigger my channel grows, the less I will say like and subscribe. That is a promise. Until then, I'm gonna have to put up with me doing it. Being honest. Honesty first. Well, for those who have made it to the end, let's do the usual put a word in the comment section for me. So this time, what we're going to do is we're going to put the word fan. F-A-N. Not as in biggest fan, but desk fan. So you can put that into the chat, either being as a word by itself, just to know that you're there, or you can put it into a sentence. Just have a little bit of fun with it. Well, I am done for the night, so whoever you are, wherever you are, have an amazing night or day. Be safe wherever you are. And, as always, I'm Grim, and I'm, well, signing off.